Thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to speak at this conference, as well as the support from the Government of Canada, the Alberta government, the Alberta office in Korea, and the embassy of Canadian Embassy in Korea here as well. So I'd like to build off of Chris Mullaney's overview of our activities on the hydrogen production side. I'll be focusing more on the hydrogen use side and the work of our Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub. And again, focus on this hub being Canada's first hydrogen hub and by far the largest hydrogen hub, with initiatives in a range of areas to grow hydrogen demand across a range of sectors. So just again, to put a bit of context, Edmonton Global, my organization, represents 14 municipalities that make up the Edmonton metropolitan region. And you can get a sense of the regions here. It's actually a very large area with about 10,000 square kilometers for a very large footprint within the province of Alberta. Large population base, maybe not necessarily compared to the Seoul population, but 1.5 million people in the metropolitan Edmonton region, or just under 1.5 million. And we're the fifth largest population in Canada as a metropolitan region, and very diverse interests along the hydrogen value chain. As you can see from this slide, may be difficult to see all of the icons there, but you'll see hydrogen applications from production, whether it be blue hydrogen, as mentioned by Chris Mullaney, other forms of hydrogen production, R&D infrastructure, as well as hydrogen use across sectors, whether it's in the aviation sector, the trucking sector, the rail sector as well, and now some of the infrastructure to connect hydrogen production to hydrogen use, like refueling stations. Just to focus briefly on the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub, this is the first hub again in Canada. It was set up about 1.5 years ago, but again, the first hydrogen hub, and really a strong partnership amongst Canadian governments at the federal level, the provincial level, so the Government of Alberta, the Government of Canada, and all of our regional municipal partners, led through 5 mayors from our municipalities that are part of the Edmonton metropolitan region, really starting from the industrial heartland, the organization that Chris represents, and the municipalities that make up Alberta's industrial heartland. What's also notable, though, is we have 2 Indigenous First Nation communities as part of our hydrogen hub, providing leadership through their chiefs participating, the Enoch Cree First Nation and Alexander First Nation, that are within the Edmonton region. And as well, I should have mentioned also our economic development organizations, our organization Edmonton Global, as well as the Alberta Industrial Heartland. So what is the hub approach? How are we pursuing hydrogen activities within our region? So really a transparent mechanism to allow for a deeper understanding of the opportunity, setting a vision for hydrogen within the region through convening stakeholders and key sectors that span the full value chain. So again, we're not only focused on production, but we're focused on use across a range of sectors and the enabling infrastructure that will support that. Soliciting input and feedback from industry and others. We've been engaging well over 100 organizations in our region over the past year, probably closer to 200 by now, and really trying to quantify what is the sectoral opportunity around hydrogen production. So whether it's using hydrogen in the transportation sector or hydrogen for heat and power, and I'll get to that in a moment. Key is making the information from the Hydrogen Hub public so everyone can understand what this vision is all about. So as industry makes investment decisions, those decisions are informed by sound analysis through our hub partnership. So the approach I'll be taking for the rest of this presentation is really to show how we're supporting the hydrogen value chain by leveraging our core assets and our capabilities in a range of areas, from policy all the way through to market access. I'll probably leave some of the latter sections for the next presentation from Alberta Invest Alberta Corporation, but I'll focus on the first several ones. So first is the policy framework, and this would have been referenced already by Minister Dale Nally and also by Chris Mullaney in his presentation. But in Canada, in our region, we have a very high degree of alignment of policies, whether it's at the regional level through the industrial heartland and our supporting municipalities, at the provincial level through the Alberta Hydrogen Roadmap and its predecessor, the Alberta Natural Gas Strategy and Vision, which saw hydrogen as a key opportunity, and through the Canadian Hydrogen Strategy that was very much informed by the work in our Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub. And if you'll review the Canadian strategy, a hub-based approach is very much a key part of how we plan to move forward to secure the economic opportunity that we have in Canada around hydrogen. And again, these strategies, whether it's at the regional level, the provincial level, or the federal level, all support key themes around, let's focus on carbon intensity of hydrogen production rather than the colors of hydrogen. Because we know in our region, as was referenced, we can produce hydrogen with a very low carbon intensity, even as far as a net zero carbon intensity with one of our projects like the Air Products Net Zero facility announced last year. Hydrogen hubs are a key part of the approach, as well as growing demand and also supporting the export opportunity. So the approach we're taking in the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub is to leverage off of our ability to produce large amounts of low carbon hydrogen at a very low cost. So the key is, how do we benefit from this by enabling the infrastructure that will allow that hydrogen to be used across sectors, whether it's in the transportation sector, our buildings, our communities, our aviation sector, because again, we feel we have a strategic advantage we need to build off of, and how to diversify our economy off of this strength. So growing more hydrogen demand, even attracting industries to our region for the manufacturing of hydrogen-related equipment and infrastructure. So in our region, we often talk about our hydrogen hub and what we know as the base case. The base case is really the vision for how we plan to grow hydrogen demand across key sectors of our economy. And you won't necessarily know the specific region we're focused on, but within Edmonton, we have mapped out where are the locations of our trucking fleets, where are the buildings that could be, where hydrogen could make some sense longer term. Where do we see blending projects? Where is our airport and how will it be making use of hydrogen? And I'll speak to those pilot projects, but you can start to see within the region, there's some clusters where we can start to connect hydrogen use with hydrogen supply, and again, provide a very low cost opportunity for growing out this hydrogen use in those range of sectors. And it only takes, in some cases, just a small amount of pipeline infrastructure to connect hydrogen production to the hydrogen consumers, and that's a clear focus for our hydrogen hub. So further on the hydrogen base case for the Edmonton region, this chart really shows the projection just up to 2025 and 2032. Our projections go all the way out to 2050, but we want to really start to accelerate hydrogen use in the next several years. So looking at what's the number of trucks, the Class 8 heavy-duty trucks in our region that go up and down our highways to other major centers like Calgary, Alberta. We know there's 20,000 trucks in total, and we know that hydrogen fuel will be very economic compared to diesel fuel, certainly by 2032, if not earlier. So how do we accelerate the entry of those vehicles into our market, whether it's hydrogen fuel cell trucks or perhaps in an earlier stage dual fuel trucks that is a lower cost for our trucking sector to get experience using hydrogen, but not have to worry about the lack of some of the refueling infrastructure that would cause some concerns. But also, what's the number of fueling stations? We see over 60 fueling stations in our region established by 2032, and those first fueling stations being established over the next year or two. Pipelines, again, to connect hydrogen demand to hydrogen production to hydrogen use, combined heat and power sites, over 40 sites by 2032, and a much larger number longer term. And you can see, again, the overall demand as well. The charts on the right show initially the focus will be on the green wedge, which is our transportation, again focused on the Class 8 long-haul trucking sector. But over the longer term, those buildings, heat and power opportunities become a much larger part of the equation. And there are pilot projects already in Alberta to use hydrogen to blend it into the residential natural gas distribution system to again accelerate demand for hydrogen. So I'd like to now turn to some of the pilot projects. There's a lot of information here. I won't go through all of it, but you'll get a sense of the focus areas. Again, largely starting in our transportation sector. So the first section is on a truck demonstration roadshow. Just earlier this year, we started some work on that roadshow with key OEMs like Nikola trucks, the Hyzon hydrogen fuel cell trucks, and getting those into the hands of our truck operators to get more experience with that technology, as well as a dual fuel truck from Vancouver-based Hydra Technology. So our Motor Transport Association, our key industry association for the trucking sector, is leading this work with support from the Canadian government and other stakeholders. So we really want to, again, accelerate the entry of hydrogen trucks into our region, but we need to have more familiarity and reduce any barriers and roadblocks to hydrogen use within the trucking sector. A second major initiative is known as the Alberta Zero Emission Truck Electrification Collaboration, or AZATEC pilot project. And that's where, again, through our Trucking Transportation Association, we'll be building 2 hydrogen fuel cell electric trucks that are equipped for our conditions in Alberta. Again, northern climate, cold weather operating conditions, very heavy loads that they have to carry. So again, really trying to inform what type of system do we need in this region longer term to support our trucking sector needs. And the EBID program on the right side is the fueling infrastructure program that will support that, with some of the initial refueling infrastructure being established for our pilot projects through a partnership between Suncor, large Canadian energy company, the largest Canadian energy company, and H-Tech, again with strong Canadian roots on infrastructure for fueling. But we have other pilot projects within the region as well. Municipal bus fleets. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be launching 2 hydrogen fuel cell buses in the city of Edmonton and the county of Strathcona to, again, get more familiarity with hydrogen fuel cell buses. It appears that these offer significant advantages over battery electric buses, again, in our northern conditions, where high heating requirements for these buses. So these are very important first steps, but we know there will be a much larger acquisition of hydrogen fuel cell buses in our region over the coming years. Also interesting, the first use of a hydrogen fuel cell for freight locomotive led by CP Rail, a Calgary-based rail company, and beginning to pilot, again, hydrogen fuel cell locomotives in both Calgary and in Edmonton, and of course refueling infrastructure for those locomotives. So we're very excited to see that pilot also in our region. And finally, I also mentioned the blending project, where we're blending up to 5% hydrogen into the natural gas distribution system within the city of Fort Saskatchewan, one of our regional partners within the metropolitan Edmonton region. We know we can do much more than 5%, but we do want to begin this process and inform policy and regulatory processes that the Alberta government is developing around the treatment of hydrogen within the natural gas utility system. So again, seeing our initiatives across a range of sectors, and I do want to highlight really some world-leading projects as well within our aviation sector, led by the Edmonton International Airport. At our first Canadian Hydrogen Convention in April, the airport announced 11 key initiatives, many world-leading initiatives, and some subsequently as well, for using hydrogen within aviation sector environment. And that's because our airport is a net zero airport with a commitment to be net zero by the year 2040, and that's really playing a major role in the shift over to hydrogen within their operations. Just some examples of the initiatives, and you'll see the logos on the right of the types of companies that are working in our region, both large multinational corporations as well as local technology startups as well. So again, looking at hydrogen buses within the airport, a Quebec-based company called Latenda that will be introducing their hydrogen. They'll be their first hydrogen fuel cell buses into that airport environment in Edmonton. Also looking at hydrogen fuel cell vehicles provided by Toyota, the Mirai, for different applications, both in taxi fleets and car rental fleets. We're looking at fleet airside hydrogen diesel fleet dual fuel technologies through, again, Hydra out of Vancouver, launching the world's first dual fuel hydrogen armored car fleet. The company is called Vexel, with using, again, hydrogen dual fuel technology, and ensuring we have the hydrogen fueling stations in place. So when I spoke earlier about those first 5 stations, the airport will have 2 of those first 5 stations very soon within the airport, with a partnership with First Element Fuel. And just very recently announced a partnership with Zero Avia, a world leader, to provide pilot hydrogen electric flights that will advance the use of hydrogen for the decarbonization of aircraft operations within the wider system. We have organizations, again, from Japan, join the Japanese Overseas Infrastructure Agency, providing support to make some further connections, as well as with Mitsui company to decarbonize the entire transportation sector within the airport operations through testing and piloting new green technologies. and one of our local companies in Edmonton, SBI Bio, providing a green hydrogen source as well for the aviation sector at the airport. Just as I near the end, I wanted to also talk about our Alberta Clean Hydrogen Centre of Excellence. This was announced in April as well at our convention, and it's an attempt now to really be focused on the next generation technologies for production of hydrogen, as well as the transportation and use of hydrogen, so across the entire value chain. And the first round of funding was announced for overall a $50 million program, with the first $20 million announced about 2 months ago. So we're in the middle of those funding applications, and that's really just for Stream 1. We'll have future streams that are organized by our other funding organization known as Emissions Reductions Alberta for later stage technology commercialization, or higher TRL levels, TRL 7 to 9. So stay tuned for much more information coming out of Alberta, again focused on things like how do we ensure we have low carbon intensity hydrogen production from the region. I'll just finish with a few additional slides to really show our value proposition in some other ways that we haven't talked about yet. But in Alberta, we have a very strong talent base with more engineers per capita than any other province in Canada, really double the Canadian average, again based on that experience from our energy sector in Alberta. And that also relates to our manufacturing productivity, which is at a higher rate, more than 2 times the rate of Canada or other provinces. So again, a highly productive labor force in Alberta and high value products coming out. And again, you'll see, again, that young, educated labor force we have in our region that will support the hydrogen sector as it moves forward. Again, productivity rate highest in Canada, and a very high STEM workforce, and a very high number of students in our region. About 130,000 students of our total population of 1.4, so almost 10% of our population are at our 7 post-secondary institutions. And we're looking at the labor force associated with the hydrogen economy. This is a really exciting project for me because we're looking at what that future labor force needs to look like and how we can leverage our existing skill sets from oil and gas. What will that new number look like as far as the new number of workforce that will be needed for the hydrogen economy up to 2050, and how will we grow from oil and gas, and what gaps can we fill to ensure we have the right skill sets in place to support industry's requirements. So we're in the middle of a hydrogen labor force market assessment, and that work will be done early next year. I think it was mentioned by Chris Mullaney, we have very large industrial parks in our region. 2 of the world's top 10 industrial parks are within the Edmonton metropolitan region, the industrial heartland being number 2 according to this measurement, and a Nisku industrial park in our southern region close to our airport being number 10. So again, we're used to operating these large industrial centers, very large fabrication capabilities, second in North America only to Houston. So this capability is ready for the hydrogen deployment. And finally, lowest taxes amongst our Canadian provinces, and it was just announced yesterday a very large surplus for the Alberta government, so that will ensure we keep our tax rates very low in this province moving forward. And lastly, just the market access. I'm sure many of you are aware of our close proximity to the Asian markets from Western Canada. Our Port of Prince Rupert in particular has some significant advantages compared to transportation of product like ammonia from other parts of North America. So we want to, again, leverage off of that capability, that strength that we have within this region to ensure we can get products to Asia, whether it's Korea, Japan, other parts of the world as well. And of course, we have a foreign trade zone within our region, custom bonded warehouses, agreements with 14 international trade agreements with over 51 countries. You can see them referenced here. So again, we're a trading jurisdiction and we want to continue to advance trade. Just lastly, again, the next steps for our hydrogen hub will be continue to work with the Canadian government to implement the Canadian hydrogen strategy, ensure we have the infrastructure in place to support exports, for example, support other federal programs being implemented, and really being the starting point for many of these initiatives as the location in Canada where we can quickly scale hydrogen production and hydrogen use. Continuing in Alberta with the hydrogen roadmap, key policy decisions moving forward, the Hydrogen Centre of Excellence I already mentioned, and continuing to work with that centre to implement their initiatives, and advance the export opportunity in partnership with other governments across Canada, including the government of British Columbia. And finally, in our hydrogen hub itself, continuing to implement our base case, to implement initiatives to build off of that vision now for hydrogen use in the region, like the 20,000 trucks that we want to be advancing very quickly. Implementing further pilot projects, working on our supply chain companies that can support international investors as well, and continuing to engage industry. So again, just a quick snapshot of our hydrogen hub and some of our key initiatives. And again, we'll be at our booth in the Canadian Pavilion and look forward to any questions you may have there as well. Thank you.